Hey everyone, here we go. We're gonna do the finale for Magical Girl Raising Project, or Mahou Shoujo Ikusei Keikaku, Limited Chapter 12, the very end of Limited, and I am just so nervous about this. I don't know if I'm gonna be crying, I don't know if people I love are going to die. I have no idea what's going to happen for the back half of this chapter and the very end of the arc. But it's shaping up to be really exciting. We have the fights going on, like the fight against Pukin and the fight against Rainbow. And here's the thing, I don't really care that much if Pukin dies or not, or if Rainbow dies or not, but to varying degrees at least, I care about all Pithy's kinda I mean, she's entertaining, but at the same time she's pretty evil. But at the same time, yeah, all the other characters, to varying degrees, I really don't want them to die. And some of the ones that are my favorites out of them that I don't want to die the most are the ones that seem like they're in the most trouble, like Tepsukeme or Kurukuruhime, or I would even throw Nanako-san and Wedden into that mix. And I also wouldn't want Mana to die. Though she's not as high on the don't die priority list as some of the others. Mana is one of my favorites. So yeah, nervous about how this is gonna go. Sorry if I don't think this will be up a day late. I think it'll be up the day it's supposed to. I'm just recording it a day late. But that's because my voice has been bothering me a bit lately, and last night after recording another video, I just didn't feel like my voice was strong enough or well enough on to do it. And in addition to that, today, of course, I eat some soup and burn the hell out of my mouth. But either way, I've got some tea. Hopefully that'll keep me from losing my voice. And we'll read through the rest of this, starting at page 25. So we've got, what, 12 pages left? Or no, 22 pages left. My math, terrible. So yeah, either way, we're starting at the very beginning of page 25 with Pithy Frederica, I believe. Yeah, because we just saw more of Kurukuru. Sorry, my nose is itching really bad. More of the fight between Kurukuruhime and Pukin. Alright, so now we have Pithy Frederica with 41 minutes remaining. Oh my heart, here we go. When she acknowledged her figure, Rainbow stopped running and headed back towards her. There was no mistaking that she was escaping so that they would chase her. Also, forgot to say, Rainbow using like 1,000,000 rainbows at a time. I thought she had a limit on the amount she could use. But I guess I was wrong. Either way, back to the chapter. 3 magical girls collided above the building. Frederica avoided the rainbows. Wedden entered the crystal ball to avoid from the rainbows. She brought Wedden back to her and avoided the rainbows. Okay. She sent Wedden back in once again to avoid the rainbows. Thanks to Wedden's presence, this wasn't a battle at all. She held on to Wedden, jumped off the building, kicked a glass window, and broke into it. Oh, so actually, yeah, that is actually a really cool use of Frederica's power to just pull herself into the ball through looking at Wedden to dodge an attack, or to then pull Wedden through to pull Wedden out of the way of an attack, or to push herself, or I guess she could push herself through away from Wedden, maybe? I don't know. No, that doesn't make sense. But either way, she can use Wedden to dodge attacks and also pull Wedden out of the way of attacks. So that's a really creative use of the crystal ball power. This wasn't a battle at all. She held on to Wedden, jumped off the building, kicked a glass window and broke into it, passed through the stunned resident, jumping out from the window on the opposite side of the room, passing through the stretching rainbow. By looking at many of Rainbow's rainbows, she was able to grasp their nature. The rainbows are formed and gave it speed and power by extending it across the air. As a weapon, there was a time lag, so she couldn't produce rainbows for instant attacks. Therefore, they could be avoided. The problem was the amount of rainbows were far too many, and since they attacked in all directions, avoiding them meant being forced to take a considerable amount of strain. Furthermore, she had to add the burden that she had to bring along, putting her into an inevitable I think they meant an unenviable situation, but putting her into an inevitable situation, or unenviable is probably the better word. If only she ran, she could do it. However, she couldn't attack at all. If she did, she'd be killed. If she wanted to fight Rainbow, she'd need a Ripple-class ranged weapon. Since she always had the crystal ball, she could only use one hand, so Frederica wouldn't last 5 seconds trying to stand up against her. Wedden, I have a question for you. What is it? Which of these has more priority to you, saving your life or killing the enemy? The enemy. An immediate answer. An answer that Frederica liked, that brought a smile to her face. I love Frederica. Oh, she's so evil, but I love her. In order to defeat her, we'll have to place you in a dangerous location. Would that be fine with you? Yes. In order to defeat her, you'll have to trust me. It doesn't matter if you hate me, alright? I hate you, but I trust you. Why would you trust me? I'm not someone you should be trusting. Surely you have a bad feeling about me. I simply cannot recommend it. You can't lie to me. You made a promise, right? Wedden smiled fearlessly as she said those words. Of course, we know that it's possible for Pithy to lie to her because Pithy's so deranged in the head. But either way, like I said, between scenes, let me get a sip of tea so that I don't destroy my vocal cords and lose my voice before we get through this. My nerves. My nerves. So now we have Funny Trick with 35 minutes remaining. The things that Funny Trick can transfer were things that had to be in a state where nobody could see them. However, even if it's only for a moment, as long as they were in that state, she could activate her magical skill. She had to know the positions of both items she wanted to transfer. It couldn't be, it was there somewhere, or it should be over there. Her effective range was 50 meters in radius. However, one of the objects had to be on hand. That distance was around 1 meter. Funny Trick has always been watching. Blinking wasn't allowed. She kept up with Kurukuru-hime's and Pukin's duel using her eyes. She waited for the timing. Inside her cloak was the smoke pellet she received from Mana. When the timing is right, she should use it. That way, Nanako-san had taught her to use her magical... The way that Nanako-san had taught her to use her magical skill was honestly quite horrifying, but the thought of a destroyed city, killing people, and seeing Pukin enjoying herself, those feelings were all blown away. Okay. Kurukuru-hime was being pressed. She couldn't afford to make a counterattack. Blood came out. She didn't take any attacks, but blood was flying. Her ballerina outfit was stained red. Either way, both their movements were fast. Funny Trick was barely able to catch them with her eyes. She absolutely couldn't keep her eyes off them. She had to look at Pukin's head. Who would have thought one of the most badass fighters in like all 3 volumes so far would be Kurukuru-hime here? Pukin said something. Kurukuru-hime made her ribbons into a conic shape and rotated. She dug the ground, aiming just for when an attack would come. Funny Trick looked at Pukin's head in order to... saw a bug in the corner of my eye. Distracted me. Where was I? Kurukuru-hime, conic shape, rotated. She dug into the ground, aiming for just when an attack would come. Funny Trick looked at Pukin's head. In order to protect her eyes from the flying dust, Pukin reflexively blinked. Here, the moment of the blink, Funny Trick activated her magical skill. Thanks to her eyelids making the organ unseen, Funny Trick replaced it with a smoke pellet. Okay. Funny Trick spread out her cloak, and underneath it, Pukin's eyeball fell down to the ground. Oh, because you couldn't see her eye. Interesting. Pukin shouted out loud and held one eye, and an explosion immediately happened on that side. Smoke began to fly up more and more from her head. The white feather that decorated Pukin's hair... This is actually a crazy way to kill somebody, and I feel like she should be killed just from that. I mean, even if it's a smoke pellet, the explosion in her head, or like, shouldn't she choke to death or something? But either way, the white feather that decorated Pukin's hair floated upwards before falling, blown away by the wind. Because we know that magical girls can suffocate. That's essentially what happened to Sonia. Even though it was a smoke bomb, it had enough power to blow off a finger. As an eyeball, exploding in the vicinity of the brain would be fatal, even to a magical girl, even if it was Pukin. Okay, we did it. We did it. Funny Trick cheered. Kurukuru-hime sat down. She was breathing heavily. While Pukin kept both of her arms low on one knee, she immediately stood up and thrusted her sword. She stabbed Kurukuru-hime, who wasn't expecting an attack, in her unprotected throat, and as Funny Trick didn't avoid the thrown dagger, it was inevitable that it would strike her in the heart. What happened? Blood flowed from where the dagger had stabbed her, and something more important flowed out as well. Pukin pulled out the rapier from Kurukuru-hime and was bathed in blood. Funny Trick saw it. Pukin's face. Her right eye socket really had been blown away in the shape of a hole. Why? How? Yeah, that was kind of their mistake for celebrating too early. Man, it sucks that some of my favorite characters are dying, but yeah. A lot of characters in this arc have died from stupidity. Like Hana died from stupidity really badly. But why? How? She held down the dagger. The blood wouldn't stop. Funny Trick staggered. The balance she lost could no longer return to her as she fell on her back. Is it over? Would it end like this? No, it wasn't over. Umishi Habata would never give up. That's why her partner surely would do the same. Funny Trick held her chest as she crawled on the ground. And now we're going to Rainbow at 37 minutes remaining. Dodging attacks frivolously and gracefully, rather than avoiding the rainbows, Frederica was using the building's construction and terrain to interfere with the rainbows, concentrated on her. Did she feel like it would cut off the waves of the attacks? To think she could do so well while carrying Wedden as baggage. Just due to her having or not having her crystal ball, her movements were completely different than the last time she faced her. She chased Frederica, attacked her, guarded a grenade whose pin was taken off, and rolled toward the building she was landing, using her rainbow as a wall, slashing the left hand that appeared in the air, timed with the explosion. Because of that, the distance between them hasn't shrunk. She went from a building to a department store, and from a department store to a station, running through the speeding police cars and ambulances. The two magical girls continued to run at a speed where people couldn't perceive them. 2. Since when did Wedden disappear? Did Frederica place her somewhere since she was just baggage? With Frederica's magical skills, she could go to a safe location from any time she wanted. Okay. She'd go to a safe location anytime she wanted. Considering her personality, she'd probably sacrifice Wedding somewhere and escape on her own. Did they make a contract to prevent that? It was too dangerous to ally with Frederica without something binding her. Certainly Wedden was nothing but an obstacle with Rainbow's ears being blocked. However, even if she was traveling light, there was no need to fear Frederica. Little by little, she was driving her into a corner. Pukin's orders were absolute. She'll lure them to a place they couldn't escape from. There she'll finish them off. Heading inside the entrance of the station and jumping past the ticket stand, Frederica slipped into a closing train door. Rainbow didn't suffer. She'd go anywhere to fulfill Pukin's orders to the end. She jumped into the train Frederica was chasing and knew she was trapped. Wedden was inside the train. There was no one else on board the train car they entered. Only Wedden alone, holding a 1-meter square sheet of paper. On the paper was written, "Do not move, do not hurt anyone," in large letters. And when Rainbow accidentally saw those instructions, she obeyed Wedden's magical skill. Okay, that's actually pretty brilliant. What if they have Rainbow to kill Pukin then, maybe? Even though Pukin kinda probably should be pretty dead. The train moved. Rainbow couldn't move. Train moved. Rainbow couldn't move. Frederica wasn't here. She had been lured. Wedden was sent off somewhere, and she prepared and waited inside the train. Frederica escaped toward the train where Rainbow would be heading toward Wedden. Okay. Wedden threw away her paper and pulled out a second one. This one read, "Open your ears so that you can follow my instructions." Rainbow couldn't oppose. She removed the rainbows inside her ears, and the sound of the train moving resonated louder inside her body. "All right. I forbid you from defying me. Release Tepsukeme from the sphere, and together we'll escape from—" Before she finished her last order, Wedden fell down. The left hand that made Wedden fall disappeared from midair. Soon, Wedden's body hit something and was sent flying, and soon Rainbow's body also hit something invisible. Okay. Hold on, so they're hitting the barrier then. Hold on, let me reread that. Okay. His body hit something, was sent flying, and soon Rainbow's body also hit something invisible. The impact rushed to her brain, yet she couldn't move. She dropped the rainbow sphere and was hit, the rear door on the train approaching in the blink of an eye. Rainbow could no longer fulfill Pukin's orders. Okay. So, I wonder what happened. So Pithy pushed Wedden then. Is she trying to push her out of the way then, or something? I'm wondering what happens here to all three of them. Pithy Frederica, remaining time 35 minutes. Even in a remote location such as this, she could feel the earth shaking and the roar of the explosion through the road. Probably from the train derailing after it left for outside the city. It wasn't hard to imagine how big of an accident it would have caused. Someone shouted loudly as they headed towards the station. Were they just bystanders? bystanders, or were they worried for someone? With the accidents and incidents that have happened today, this person seemed to be pretty energetic. Frederica stepped above a vending machine in a back alley, then kicked a window frame until she went to top a building. Black smoke had risen above the station, and the forest of rainbows had disappeared. Wedden had instructed her that it was more important to defeat the enemy. And the promise built inside Frederica clicked. Frederica followed Wedden's orders. In order to ensure Rainbow was killed, it was best that Wedden was sacrificed in that situation. They lured Rainbow into a narrow space within a train car, and there she would run into Wedden. From there, Wedden told them to escape from the train quickly, but escaping together from the train would mean letting go of the objective of killing Rainbow. Frederica dropped Wedden, and the train headed outside the city. Then, Rainbow and Wedden were sandwiched between the train and the barrier, and the train derailed. She had to do it. She absolutely had to accomplish it. That kind of sense can make someone misjudge their abilities. Frederica's seen many magical girls die for that reason. I told you not to trust someone like me. Rainbow had been killed. Wedden, who she was shackled to, had been killed. Frederica had one big job left to do. She couldn't leave the city without getting it. She saw a faint humanoid figure flying in the sky. Still alive after that. Still alive after something like that. You really are something, she murmured in amazement. Okay, so somehow or another, we still have Tepsukeme surviving. Nanako-san with 33 minutes now. Pukin's face was missing. Gray smoke was rising from the part of her head that was missing. Even if you were a magical girl, she couldn't be alive. Nanako-san saw Pukin through her goggles. Her status was strange. She wasn't in good condition. Pukin had managed to fool life itself. A red line had passed through Pukin's cheeks. She used her sword to place herself under her own magic. Just before the smoke pellet exploded, she made herself convinced that she hadn't taken any damage. Pukin's brain should have been damaged. There shouldn't be any way for her to make herself convinced at all. Just convincing herself. No, not just convincing herself. She was using magic in addition to convincing herself. Her personal parameters indicated an abnormal value. The heart marks indicating her life force were far too many. This is fun, isn't it? Right. Pukin swung her rapier. Blood flew from point to point. Kurukuru Hime was holding her throat as she fell. Funny trick, her chest. Both of them had blood caught in between their fingers that were pressing down. The goggles had indicated that both of them suffered fatal wounds. Nanako-san, knowing that she was useless, held the fireball wand and stepped forward. Her fear was thin. She felt that she had to take responsibility. She knew she couldn't do it. She would be killed. Yet, she'll fight to the end. She's come all this way, all by sticking to her lies. She wanted to become a wonderful magical girl in her final moments. When Nanako-san wanted to take another step, she was pushed down from behind her. What are you? You're in my way. Hurry and run. It was Mana. She pushed Nanako-san away with her cane. Don't think you can just take responsibility by fighting and dying here. Do the best job you can do right now. That means escaping by yourself. I'll fight. I need to avenge Hana. Mana had 3 syringes standing from her neck. Its contents were already empty. Then Mana injected 3 more syringes into her neck. She trembled as if she was suffering a cramp. Come on, you damn swordsman. Such insolence. Matching the timing to Pukin stepping in after she said come on, Mana launched an attack. She used her cane like a spear and showered Pukin with thrusts. Pukin, who was caught off guard, blocked it with her dagger. She didn't lose out by speed or strength. The dagger and twisted cane forcefully pushed against each other. How long would Mana's doping effect last? The goggles calculated figures said 15 seconds. With that amount of time, Nanako-san could surely escape. She knew she didn't have time to ponder it over, so Nanako-san ran. If she died, she can take responsibility. She thought foolishly. Until Mana pushed her off, she thought it would be okay. It was just as Mana said. If she died, she wouldn't have been forgiven. Nanako-san jumped to Pukin's left arm and pressed it down. Although Mana was doing all she can, Pukin's right arm was forcefully holding off Mana's entire body. Pukin's left arm wanted to stab Mana's flank, so Nanako-san pressed it down and stopped it, and as a result, Nanako-san's arm was hurt and bloodied. Didn't I tell you to escape? Or are you so naive that you think dying means you've taken responsibility? You'll never be forgiven. My apologies. I'm sorry. I know that I'm naive to think that dying means I've taken responsibility. I won't think of that a second time, I won't. The wound on her arm widened. Blood flew. She couldn't resist against Pukin's power. Then run already, idiot, moron, stupid, what are you thinking? What are you doing? I'm taking responsibility. All I have to do is beat her, right? Pukin pushed back with an even stronger power. Nanako-san felt like her arms were about to be removed. Nanako-san looked up at the sky and screamed hard with spit flying out. Please. Faster than Nanako-san's spit could fall to the ground, Kurukuru-hime's ribbons moved. The light of Kurukuru-hime's life is gone. She couldn't move the fingers of her arms anymore. However, her consciousness hasn't gone yet. Boiling anger and resentment overwhelmed inside her, her gaze directed toward Pukin. Her tenacity and grudge had stopped her from the brink of death. Kurukuru-hime's ribbons moved and swirled, expanding to their maximum width of 50 centimeters, wrapping around Pukin, who was being pushed back. Nanako-san fell back and was separated, and at the same time the ribbons collapsed and fell to the ground. Thump. The stone from inside the ribbons fell down, rolled, hitting the thick roots of a tree and stopping. The one who still had her consciousness wasn't just Kurukuru-hime, wrapping her with ribbons, making Pukin invisible to eyesight. Funny Trick, who was crawling away, leaving a trail of blood, activated her magical skill. Mana, who was no longer doped, collapsed. Nanako-san pressed down on her arm while squatting. She found it mysterious how she could be alive. Funny Trick and Kurukuru-hime were, according to what her goggles displayed, already gone. They had played their last hand, using their magical skills to finally take down Pukin. They resisted their inevitable deaths ahead of them with willpower, and with even someone like Pukin failing to finish them off. Pukin had misjudged the strength of their life force, the strength of their spirit, and the strength of the grudge they held when their friends and loved ones were killed. Nanako-san looked back at the stacked timber. Blood poured out from inside of the timber. This was the genuine final blow. Inside the pile of timber was a stone that was placed, a big stone the size of a child's head. They had done nothing to the stone, that's why it could touch the barrier. They placed it so that part of it was inside the barrier and part of it was outside. While Kurukuru-hime hid Pukin, Funny Trick exchanged the locations of Pukin and the stone. Pukin teleported toward the barrier, and as for the result, all you need to do was look at the blood pouring from the logs to understand. It was something that could only be used if Pukin was able to move. I guess I was a little useful, she thought as she sighed. Or wasn't able to move, of course, she thought as she sighed, frowning at the pain in her arm, and when she wanted to stand up, the timber crumbled. Inside the crumbling pile of timber, a hand reached out. Scratch. Something began crawling. Nanako-san, who was trying to stand up, fell back once again, landing on her butt. Huh, what a boring attempt. She was missing a face. Her whole body was stained red with her blood, covered in wood chips. Scratch, scratch, scratch. She moved with only her upper body. Her lower body was facing the barrier, completely cut in half. Pukin crawled without any concern as her insides began to be dragged along. While her body was in this state, her right hand firmly held onto her rapier, not letting go. She was heading toward Nanako-san. Why did she look like she was having fun? Pukin was smiling. Are you the last? Good. Now I can finish you off. Pukin glared with her remaining eye as Nanako-san could no longer move. Her preparations and fighting spirit were all blown away, while trying to cover up her heart that was filled with fear. Nanako-san looked at the sky. Ah, Tepsukeme was headed this way. Her body was thin, because of that her flight speed rose. Even though she was literally flying faster than the wind, she wouldn't be able to make it to the dying Pukin in time before she swung her blade. The moment Pukin thrusted her sword toward Nanako-san's face, someone's right hand appeared in the space where there was nothing before, and punched Pukin's wrist from above. She could hear the sound of cracking bones. Pukin's rapier dropped. She quickly tried to pick it up, but another, faster left hand picked up the rapier and disappeared. Pukin's left hand scratched the air. Tepsukeme descended. Tepsukeme entered the immobile Pukin's body through the large hole on her face. Pukin's expression stiffened, and not even a second passed before her body exploded from inside. Jesus, Tepsukeme! Her clothes became scattered, her fancy accessories flying towards the bushes. Everything within a 10-meter radius was soiled with her innards. Inside the rain of blood, the least Nanako-san could do was look up at Tepsukeme to thank her, and she saw that she was shedding tears. Her lower lip extruded just a little as if she didn't want to cry, but the tears didn't care as they continued to stream down. Where's Rainbow? Dead. Wedden is dead too. Everyone is dead. Everyone dead. Rainbow too. Wedden too. Kuru Hime too. Funny trick too. Pukin and Rainbow's deaths were probably viewable through her goggles. Her boss was probably still in a meeting, so she should be able to relay the information. Then, the Foreign Affairs would have no reason to launch the WMD. Was this a good thing? Was this really a good thing? Is May laughing now? No. You're crying. May's never practiced crying before, but May can do it. Why? Yeah, I wonder why, huh? So now we have Mana, who may or may not have lived, and it looks like the only people to have survived were May and Pithy, of course, but May and Nanako-san. Okay, but now we have the epilogue, which is going to be kind of the big important thing where we're going to find out what's really going on. Especially since it's like 10 pages long. Because the epilogue's going to really explain everything. Okay, so let me get some water before I continue, or tea. I will say before I get into the epilogue, I feel like some of the deaths weren't all that great. Pukin's death was good. It feels like a lot of the characters, I don't know, it's a problem that I've brought up and limited a bunch, but it feels like the characters, even though we spent longer before killing most of them off, most of them were just not as developed as the ones in Restart or Unmarked. Like, I feel like Wedden died too soon, Wedden probably should have lived, and the same goes for Kuru Hime and Funny Trick, kind of. Those two I can see dying more, but I really feel like they probably should have lived. And it's weird because I thought the first two arcs were written so well, and the only character that I'm like, okay, they died, but they probably should have lived story-wise, it would make for a better story, before now was Tama. Tama was the only character I thought that about. But now I think that about a lot of characters in this arc. I'm like, they probably should have died. They just didn't really have a good enough story before they died. So, yeah, I'm kind of like, I don't know. I don't want to be anything but positive about anything, but yeah, it's like, it's okay. It's okay. But either way, let's go to the epilogue. It's certainly not a masterpiece of destroying you like Restart and Restart's ending. But either way, let's go to the epilogue. As she went out into the courtyard, she felt a cold wind blow. If she looked up, she'd see the gray sky continue on endlessly. Even if she wore stockings and tights, it would still be cold. Christmas was closing in, and with a few more sleeps, it'll be New Year's. Sitting in the courtyard for a tea time on a time like this was stupid, wasn't it? She only thought of it and didn't say anything out loud. At least be inside the house. Momori Totoyama didn't hesitate as she walked inside the complicated courtyard. Calling it a complicated courtyard might seem strange, but the building's courtyard really wasn't that complicated. And I always forget which one's which, but Momori is Shadowgale, right? Okay, really was that complicated. When its master had abandoned the right of supervision to the courtyard, the daughter who replaced him planted trees wherever she pleased, cutting it to whatever shape she liked, and as a result the courtyard became chaotic. Large bear plushies that had their arms spread upright, giant chess pawns that walled off paths, an open book that stayed in an open state, Nike of Samothrace, I think it's Samothrace, scoffing without a face. After coming out of the maze of plants with nothing unifying them other than being the daughter's tastes, she saw a single white table placed down. There in there was the courtyard's master, Kanoe Hitokoji. Okay, that's Ple. Was messing with her magical phone, magical phone's connected panel. You're late, Momori. Still, I hurried to get to you. She placed dishes, tea, and candies in order next to the panel, and since she got permission with a please, she sat down face to face. The wicker chair, which cost Momori her allowance for several years, froze her butt cold after being left in the harsh cold air. Kanoe grabbed a cup on her hand and drank it, and without saying anything, slid a brown envelope across the table. What's this? A reward. Something for a job you've done a while ago. The project is past its first stage. Did I do something? Doing something mischievous, being the target of her pranks, being used to being told what to do, being fooled, serving her lady her favorite tea in this damn cold weather. These kinds of jobs happen from once a day to several times a day, but she's never gotten a reward from them. I asked you for a favor, Momori, so it wouldn't mean anything just to repay you with money and such," said Konoe. Even if it didn't mean anything, Momori wouldn't mind, but saying it out loud would make her parents, who prioritized the Hitakoji family over everything, be angry. "I thought you didn't want to pay my favors with cash, my lady." "Ah, I see. As I thought. What you usually do is how you express your goodwill, isn't it, Momori?" "Yes, inside your mind, it probably looks that way, my lady." It didn't look like she didn't notice the sarcasm, but Konoe smiled as if she didn't notice. "This isn't compensation from me. This is a formal compensation from the Land of Magic." "The Land of Magic gives out money?" "Officially, I took part of my salary to give to you for your work, Momori." She said the word "I" twice, which probably meant that she wanted her to feel grateful. Even just her parents and their children living with and working for the Hitakoji family was a reward they couldn't repay, so she wondered what it would mean if she took on more unnecessary rewards. There were people in society who lent things that couldn't be repaid. She didn't have to think what kind of person Konoe was. Momori picked up the envelope that she received. She opened a bit of the slender mouth of the envelope and confirmed its contents. 40,000? No, 45,000. Was this much really okay? She wondered, probably because the sensation was paralyzing. By the way, back to what I was saying. What kind of job did I do? I'm kinda scared to get money for something for something I didn't know. You messed with some goggles. Oh, that thing. That's quite a while ago, wasn't it? Other than communication functions, it had message log deletion and the ability to disrupt magical phone signals, which she felt like was a criminal-like scent. She remembered how uncomfortable she felt when she wondered how it was going to be used. Okay, so I wonder why they disrupted the magical phone signals during all this. Seems kind of weird that they would have done that. But either way, I guess it helped their enemies from communicating, but at the same time it feels like it hurt their own cause. But either way, your magical skill has grown, Momori. Because of that, a variety of things have made progress. You're not using it for anything bad, are you? What kind of person do you think I am, Momori? It's because of who you are that I worry, my lady. Why would a magical girl of justice like myself possibly do something bad? These macarons aren't bad. You should grab a bite too, Momori. She took a bite of the macaron that she had been advised to. She was stumped at how delicious it was. What are you reading, my lady? A report from my subordinate. Speaking of, my lady, you got promoted again last month, didn't you? Is this a new subordinate? No, this is a report from a previous subordinate I had. She reports directly to me. Huh? We had to downsize, you see. She helped me with some things. So, even the Land of Magic has those. Society sure is rough. It's not wrong to say that we're terminating some staff, but on the administrative side, we're not shrinking our organization. The original meaning is rebuilding, after all. Previously, they've been of much use to the Human Resources Division, but since I became the head, that work has become unnecessary, right? A fairy leaves across a rainbow. Poetic, isn't it? Really? I suddenly have an increased workload ahead of me. Okay. Right. Okay. So, hold on a second. Let me keep reading before I jump to conclusions here. Really, I suddenly have an increased workload ahead of me. Looks kind of rough. It is rough. In my current division, I have to pay attention to the power balance of the other division heads. Really. For example, the Foreign Affairs Division, why are they all so crude? I don't know if it's a tradition or something, but sending out an expert in violence to pressure the other divisions is such an outdated practice. One that's better to be stopped as soon as possible, right? Really. Furthermore, recently they forcibly sent their ace to wedge herself into their criminal investigation team, led by the Examination Division, but they ended up being beaten at their own game, huh? Foreign Affairs Division shouldn't have considered taking other divisions' essential points, raising a large barrier just to capture the criminal alive. Were they okay with suffering great losses? Even though it seems like a snitch fed them false information, it was still a stupid move. Well, they'll be laying low for a while now at least. Really. Of course, speaking of incidents, there was a huge jailbreak incident. Because of that, a division who used prisoners to do their dirty work inhumanely has been caught. Wow. And that's also a division whose relationship opposed mine. You see, thanks to this, things have become somewhat easier. Isn't that good? And how are the escaped prisoners? They're all criminals, right? Two of the three escaped prisoners, thanks to the examination division's investigation team's success, were safely neutralized, even though they've stopped breathing, so to speak. While they couldn't be captured, they were criminals famous in history, so we can say they did a fine job. Soon, the group leader will be rewarded something. And the last person? The last person escaped. Well, of the three of them, she was the small fry, it seems. Really. Did Konoe even notice her deliberate, repeated replies? Momori, you didn't hear a single word I said, did you? She did notice. What you said, my lady, is far too abstract for me to understand. It feels like it's just going through one ear and out the next. Nothing left in my head. I know. That's why I tell you these things, Momori. Why me specifically? Well, I can't exactly tell someone who could understand and remember all of this, can I? Please, tell it to someone who can understand and remember all of this. It'd be nice for a day to come where I could speak to that person. If the land of magic becomes a little more honest, if I was in a position to reform it, then magical girls won't just be something to be used anymore. You're talking like that again, Momori wanted to reply. But when she saw Konoe's face, she shut her mouth. She didn't see the usual Konoe. She saw a serious-faced Konoe that she shouldn't make fun of. What's wrong? No, nothing. When she shook her head sideways, Konoe had returned to her usual self. Naturally, one who wonders endlessly won't receive any godsends. Once you have your pieces in place, you have to slowly move them, manipulate them, match them, blow them away, urging them to act by trying to stop them, skillfully adjusting them so you can produce good results. Even when you've reached your objective, you don't simply throw them away. You have to properly clean them up. Plink, a droplet of water fell onto the round table. Her nose, her hand were all hit by rain. Ah, man, we should hurry inside. We'll catch a cold if we get wet with rain. Well, then, let's do that, Nyan. What's with that ending? It's creepy. How pleasant of you to call it creepy. I think it's cute. So, of course, that's what I was thinking earlier on in the scene when she was talking about getting rid of things she didn't need it anymore. I feel like this means she was the one that was behind Rainbow the entire time, and she had basically set all this up for them to take down Rainbow. So, Flez kind of the bad guy here. Really, I am not liking Limited at all for the second half of this chapter. It's taking characters I liked and making me like them less, like the arc characters that died in kind of dumb ways, and now Fleh making me like less. So all it's doing, it's like a negative chapter. It's making me less interested in all these characters. But either way, definitely the opposite of Restart's ending, which was amazing. On the bedding atop the concrete floor, there were rainfall stains from the ceiling rainwater. Dripped down from the ceiling. Oh, there's a period. Sorry. Rainwater dripped down depending on the rainfall, and because of that, even on sunny days it was humid. Hardly an environment suited for an injured person. But if you're being pursued, there was no room for luxury. Inside the room looked messy, and you could count the number of objects placed inside. A bed, a desk, blinds, a sink, a bookshelf, and the owner. When opening the large drawer of steel located in the middle of the room, there were some bottles arranged side by side. Inside of it was packed with colorful powder. She took out a small balance scale from the second row drawer and placed it on the table. She pinched the small weights with her tweezers, putting it on one side, then continued to drop medicine from inside the small bottle, adjusting it so that both sides were balanced. Once she ensured that it was balanced, she placed it inside a mortar, and she did this several times repeatedly. From the third row drawer, she took an unlabeled bottle, and she poured the translucent liquid into a mortar. Carefully slow as to not spill from the mortar, she grinded it until no sign of the powder remained. In about an hour, her semi-mucus-like metallic green solution was complete. All right, time for your medicine. She called out gently to the girl lying on the bed. Without changing her expression, the girl shook her head while continuing to lie down on the bed. I don't like medicine. Don't be selfish now. This is for your body. Frederica narrowed her eyes, sitting on the bed. The girl's entire body was wrapped in bandages. She moved the bandages out of the way and checked her wounds. She smiled as the wounds were a lot better compared to yesterday. Even though it was unsanitary, even though there were no medical facilities, a magical girl was stubbornly strong. They were made that way. She had difficulty swallowing Frederica's special drink due to its nature. Frederica inserted a pipette into the mortar and absorbed the chemical liquid, raised the girl's face, and held up her mouth as she placed it in. She was careful not to clog her throat. Bit by bit, she sent the pipette inside her mouth. When her mouth was full, she sent another mouthful, and a third one, continuing until there was nothing left of the mortar. The girl looked cute as she kept opening her mouth, as if she was a baby bird waiting to be fed. "You can close your mouth now." "Yes, master." And, of course, waiting for this illustration to load, of course it's Ripple, but I already said that Ripple was definitely going to survive this one. Alright. Because she's kind of a main character. Okay, before continuing, I really need something to drink. My throat is, like, killing me. Okay. What page are we on? One page left, really. We're at 45. Alright. Frederica raised half the girl's body and entangled her finger on the girl's hair, combing her. The long black hair was glossy and smooth. Stroking it made the tips of her fingers comfortable. It beautifully reflected the fluorescent light of the lamp. Her right hand combed her hair. Her left hand stroked the girl's left eye. That tickles. But of course, it's because I meant to do that. The girl's left eye had been blocked by a deep cut of a blade. Not to mention her left arm was missing from the elbow down. These were the only things that Frederica's special medicine couldn't heal. Well, that's just fine. Using the 256 note handkerchief, she wiped the girl's lips clean of any medicine. The girl, Ripple, was lucky. Her enemy didn't want to kill her using her magical skills. She didn't aim for any vitals. Even when she was unconscious, thanks to returning to human form, her coat collar got stuck in one of the protrusions in the hole, and so she didn't fall all the way to the bottom. Furthermore, Frederica, who wanted to escape quickly but wanted to watch the fight till the very end, could quickly grab her and administer first aid. It was only because of these events that she was able to live. If even one of these events were missing, she would be dead. Frederica had deposited Ripple, who was on the verge of life and death, to the nearest hospital as an injured person, and while using Pukin's sword on Ripple, she told her to possess a strong vitality and healing ability, and after pulling Ripple back from the brink of death, she used her crystal ball to find a new location. Ever since then, Ripple has been under Frederica's control. Ripple has grown far since when she last met her a long time ago. Beyond Frederica's initial assumption that she hadn't grown as much as Snow White, she had become a magical girl who shouldn't be ashamed no matter what position she was in. That was certainly close to Frederica's ideal. The sword she stole from Pukin and Ripple, who had lost her memory. If she combined these two, the ideal magical girl could be born. Frederica smiled at the girl. And again, it makes you wonder, should Pukin's sword have Pukin's ability? Shouldn't that just be a Pukin thing? That's kind of weird. Either way, Frederica smiled at the girl. "Your wounds have almost healed. At this rate, you'll be able to stand tomorrow." "Really, I'm so glad." Her expression didn't change. Her voice was also monotonous. Since Frederica was using someone else's items, it's probably the case that she couldn't use it as skillfully. Ripple's happiness didn't seem to be a lie, though, and that was kinda cute. "Let's study to become a magical girl." "What's a magical girl?" "A good question. It's someone who feels like me. I'm going to be someone like Master. I'm so glad." "I'm happy that you said that. Let's aim to become the ideal magical girl, shall we?" Okay. So I hate to be negative after reading an entire arc, but that was a pretty bad finale. That was taking all the hype and making it a bit disappointing. One thing I don't like about the writing of this arc is how so many characters died of stupid. They caught a case of the stupid. These characters that were really smart and coming up with these great plans died in really dumb ways. Hana was the biggest earlier in the arc. When she could have just ignored Pukin completely and everybody would have lived and been fine, but she chose to jump in the way and interrupt her and then get killed by her. So yeah, that was definitely the dumbest one. But I would say the same goes kind of for Kurukuru Hime and for Funny Trick, who just said, oh, we attacked her once, now let's let our guard down completely. That was another really dumb death. Weddens was pretty disappointing too. So again, it was just I hate to be negative about things, and you all know I try to be positive about every single thing I review, and I hate being negative, but this was just not a good finale. And the arc itself, like I had said before, it had been really, really slow, but I thought that was good so that we could get to know the characters before we jump into the action. But in the end, I don't think the action really made up for it. And also in the end, I feel like we just don't know as much about the characters as we learned in less time in Restart or in less time in Unmarked. So I felt like they weren't really as developed either. So yeah, I don't know, there were problems there, and having Fleb be behind the whole thing is kind of disappointing because it makes... We already knew Fleb had sort of dodgy morals, but to have her have outright set the whole thing up, putting a lot of the blame on her for a lot of this, does make it worse, especially if she was the one that was in charge of what Rainbow was doing before then. So yeah, it's disappointing because not only did it take the new arc characters and not tell a very good story with them, where a good ending could have led to a good story being told with them. Kind of like Clantail. We didn't learn basically anything about Clantail, but through the ending, her character kind of solidifies itself. Whereas these characters get endings that didn't really lend them anything. So yeah, I don't know. Limited, kind of not the best arc. I had said before that it's pretty much impossible to live up to Restart. Restart was so good. But Unmarked 2 is hard to live up to. Unmarked is really good. And this definitely didn't really live up to either. So yeah, I hate being negative, and now I'm upset that I didn't like it. You know what I mean? Because I wanted to love it, but I definitely didn't. I don't think it was a very good ending. Yeah, and it's not just because characters died. I would have been cool with them dying if they had died well. Like in past arcs, there are characters I love that have died, and sure, it sucks they're not alive anymore, but at the same time, they had good deaths. And this arc did not have good deaths. Like, I would say, out of the 3 arcs, Hana is one of my least favorite characters because of her death. So yeah, I don't know. This is disappointing. So I'm wondering if Mana died from ODing on the magical steroids. Oh yeah, that was another thing. When we got first introduced to the magical steroid stuff, I was like, okay, she's going to basically supercharge herself at some point and go in for this big sacrificial fight. But she did all that, and it only lasted 15 seconds, and she didn't really do much of anything. I mean, without the crazy doped up drugs 6 times over, Kurukuru Hime was much cooler. So that was kind of disappointing on Mana's part too. So yeah, man, I guess the big word is disappointed. I'm just disappointed in a whole lot of stuff. But I guess we'll see what's going on with the next arc. So I talked to Platt, or I messaged Platt the other day, and they're going to get me the character designs to react to for next arc. And in addition to that, next week I'll re-up. I don't know how I want to re-update the favorite characters video though, because at this point it's going to be like a ton of characters if I'm doing all the characters from 3 arcs. So I'm not sure how I want to do that. So I'll have to think about that for a bit, and next arc next week I'll do whatever I can figure out to do for that. I'm really not sure how to do it yet though. Oh well. Like I said, I'll think about it, and you'll either see next week or I'll update you sometime before then. But either way, that was that, I guess. Like, if you did like the video, comment down there to tell me what you thought of this chapter, what you thought of my thoughts on it, or this half of the chapter, this arc. Subscribe for more Magical Girl Raising Project, much more on the channel. Follow on Twitter if you want. I can try to keep you updated there and stuff for the channel. And yeah, like, comment, subscribe, follow on Twitter. And if you want a link to our Discord server to talk to me or more of us there, then yeah, just ask and I'll give you a link. That's it. Thank you once again for watching, and I'll see you all next time.